What do Washington, D.C. and Jerusalem have in common? Both were chosen as capitals for the exact same reason: they belong to nobody. The man who made that choice 3,000 years ago was a military hero, a poet, an adulterer, and a murderer. And the Bible tells you all of it. To understand why that matters, you need to understand the problem David was solving. David has three defining traits. First, musician and poet. The tradition credits him with the Psalms. Second, military commander. He conquered territory and defended Israel's borders. Third, and most important for history, political strategist. David understood something most ancient rulers didn't. Symbols of divine authority placed in the right location could hold a fractured nation together permanently. That's a trait. Political shrewdness is what created Jerusalem as we know it. Here's the problem. Israel was a loose tribal confederation, like 12 tribes with competing loyalties and no central authority. Any capital chosen from an existing tribal territory would breed resentment. Pick a city in Judah and the northern tribes feel dominated. Pick one in Benjamin or Ephraim, and the south revolts. The early United States faced the same dilemma. They tried New York, they tried Philadelphia, neither worked. The solution was a new federal district on neutral ground. David found the same solution 3,000 years earlier. He conquered Jebus, a small Canaanite city sitting right on the border between Judah and Benjamin. It had zero tribal affiliation. It belonged to no Israelite clan. After conquest, it belonged to David alone by right of the sword. Then came the master stroke. David transferred the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest believed to contain the tablets of the Sinai covenant, the most holy object in Israelite religion, into his new city. One move, and Jerusalem wasn't just a political capital. It was the dwelling place of God's covenant promises. And here's a common misconception worth correcting. Jerusalem had no prior religious significance to Israel. David created that significance. The choice was political first, sacred second. The political implication was staggering. David's dynasty had now inherited the covenant blessings, God's promises to Abraham, to Moses, to the patriarchs. All of it now flowed through David's house in David's city. He planned a temple to make this permanent. His son Solomon would build it, a cultic center, a central place of worship and sacrifice that would bind all 12 tribes to one location under one dynasty. So David built the perfect political machine, and then the Bible does something almost no ancient text ever does. It tears the curtain back. The court history, scholars name for the stretch of text in 2 Samuel chapters 9 through 20 and the 1 Kings chapters 1 and 2, focuses on who will succeed David as king. And it is devastating. David's PR team would have been horrified. This is not propaganda. This is a dynasty's founder exposed in all his weakness. The Bathsheba affair. David stays home while his army fights. He sees Bathsheba bathing, sleeps with her. She's married to Uriah, one of his own soldiers. When she becomes pregnant, David tries to cover it up. He summons Uriah home, hoping he'll sleep with his wife. Uriah refuses. He won't enjoy comfort while his comrades are in the field. So David sends orders to place Uriah in the front lines where the fighting is fiercest. Uriah dies. David takes Bathsheba. Then the prophet Nathan arrives with a parable. A rich man with vast flocks steals a poor man's only lamb. David erupts in outrage. Nathan's reply, "You are that man." The child dies as divine punishment. It gets worse. David's indecision on succession breeds resentment among his sons. His own son Absalom leads a full rebellion. David flees Jerusalem, the very city he built, the seat of his power, stripped of his crown, weeping, walking barefoot up the Mount of Olives. When Absalom is finally killed in battle, David's grief is so extreme. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom," that it enrages the soldiers who risk their lives for him. His general Joab has to rebuke the king for mourning the enemy instead of thanking his own army. The end is no better. David is nearly senile. unable to keep warm, politically impotent. Solomon's succession, often presented as God's clear choice, is in the court histories telling the result of palace intrigue. Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba maneuver behind the scenes to secure Solomon's throne while David barely understands what's happening. And this is not a story of divine ordination, it's a story of raw political maneuvering around a dying king. How unusual is this honesty? Consider this. When the same story is retold in the Book of Chronicles, a later retelling of Israel's history written around the 4th century BCE, centuries after the events, with a very different editorial agenda, the Bathsheba episode is simply gone, deleted. The adultery, the murder, Nathan's rebuke, erased. Absalom's revolt, gone. David's humiliation, his grief, his senility, all removed. What remains is David, the ideal king. Temple planner, worship organizer, military hero, nothing else. Place this in context. Egyptian royal inscriptions portray pharaohs as divine and infallible. Mesopotamian king lists and Assyrian annals are pure propaganda. Kings never fail, never sin, never weep. Chronicles sits in the middle, selective praise, failures quietly removed. The core history stands at the far end of the spectrum, nearly unique in the ancient world. Adultery, murder, weakness, senility, all preserved in the official record of the dynasty's founder. David's genius was building a political and religious center that would outlast him by millennia. The core history's genius was insisting that the man who built it was no god. He was a deeply flawed human being. And this tension between the institution David created and the person David was runs through the entire rest of the Bible. Prophets invoke the throne of David as a promise of future redemption. They also invoke Nathan's rebuke as a warning against the arrogance of power. The Bible's own argument with itself. Can human beings be trusted with divine authority? Solomon will inherit that tension, a magnificent temple, an empire at its peak, and the seeds of its own destruction.